Thank you, Alice, for your information. Now I'm going to talk about the arrival of that plague. The Black Death entered southwestern England in the summer of 1348, and by all accounts struck Bristol with shocking force. In that year, 1348, it may come in the country of Dortes a little before the feast of John the Baptist, Duchess, and one of them from Bristol came alongside. One of the sailors had brought with him from Gascony the seed of the terrible pestilence, and through him the men of that town of Malcolm were the first in England to be infected. In addition, lying rumor of a terrible plague spreading like wildfire across Europe had been rumored. For some time, it is not surprising that the Birban trading port of Bristol was the first major town in Britain to be affected. For it, they had closed the connection with all the continent. Then the dreadful pestilence made its way along the coast by Southampton and reached Bristol. For a few times, they gave their best more than 2 or 3 days, or even half a day. Henry told Chronic Bristol was the second largest city in Britain and was the principal port of entry of the West Country. Now, what were the symptoms of the Black Death? Yersinia causes 3 types of plagues in humans: bubonic, pneumonic, and septicemic. Although there is DNA evidence that Yersinia was present in victims of the Black Death, it is uncertain which form of the majority of the infection took. It is likely that all 3 played some role in the pandemic. For example, bubonic plague causes fever, fatigue, shivering, headaches, guidance, intolerance to light, pain in the back, and sleepiness, apathy, and delirium. The second plague was pneumonia. That plague affects the lungs and causes symptoms similar to those of the severe pneumonia: fever, redness, and shortness of breath. Fluid fills in the lungs and can cause the death. Other symptoms may include insomnia, stupor, speech disorder, and loss of memory. And finally, the 3rd plague was septicemia. That plague is an infection of the bone. Its symptoms include fatigue, fever, and internal bleeding. What were the effects and the consequences? This disease had a terrible impact, generally speaking. A quarter of the population was wiped out by a local settlement. Often, half of the population was exterminated. The direct impacts on economy and society were basically a reduction in production and in consumption. The epidemic clearly caused economic efforts, which brought about the deepest ever recession in history. It is important to note that it was in that area, clearly marked by the impact of that plague. With the largest scale construction of monasteries, churches, and cathedrals carried out, consequently, it can say that Black Death is the reason of the Middle Ages come to an end. In addition, the most probable economic consequence of the disease were that the fields were not cultivated and the harvest rotted. That caused an incipient shortage of agricultural products, which were only consumed by those people who could pay for them, with the increase in prices. Those with the fewest means endured hardship and suffering. In the long term, this situation would be aggravated by specific outbreaks of the Black Death until the end of the Middle Ages. The consequences of this violent catastrophe were many. A cessation of war and a sudden slump in trade were only a short duration. A more lasting and serious consequence was the drastic reduction of the amount of land under cultivation due to the death of the many workers. About the psychological effects of the Black Death were reflected in the north of the Alps, but not in Italy, by a preoccupation with death and the afterlife evidenced in poetry, sculpture, and painting. the Roman Catholic Church lost some of its monopoly over the salvation of souls as people turn to mysticism and sometimes to excesses. Finally, the study of the contemporary achieve suggests as a mortality variant in different regions, meaning Europe's population died in the epidemic. The Black Death certainly caused the depopulation or the total disappearance of about 1,000 villages. A rough estimate is that 25 million people in Europe died from that plague during the Black Death. The population of Western people did not gain reach its pre-1348 until the beginning of the 16th century. Now, my partner John is going to tell us some detail about this plague and is going to talk about the Dark Age.